I am co-founder of Surgery Center of Oklahoma, a facility that was started in May of 1997. I want to start by saying it's very unusual for a physician group to ask me to address them. I give a lot of speeches and I travel a lot, and it's very, very unusual that physicians ask me to speak to them. And I think that's emblematic of what is going on in healthcare. And there's a particular section of this talk I think that I'm going to concentrate on that I think many of you will find provocative. I don't mean to be offensive, but I do mean to be provocative because some of what's going on, not most, but some of what's going on in healthcare that everyone in here would agree is wrong. Some of that's on our profession. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that. And I think it's an honor to be here to address physicians. But I spend most of my time speaking to people in the industry who want to buy affordable, high-quality care, and they don't know where to go. The demand is huge for high-quality, affordable care. It would drown everyone's practice in here if those connections become solid. So I'll just start off kind of with the punchline good news. There's a revolution going on. I am an open book, and my goal here today is to encourage all of you, and in the most compelling way that I can, to join this free market movement. Let's see if I can. And I found very early on that something was wrong. It became very interesting to me how anesthesia bills were formed, and it was a system that had been in place for a long time where you add up your units and your time and you give these bills to people and some faceless payer pays you. And I wasn't satisfied with really, how did this affect the patients really? My great uncle was a doctor, and he was one of those guys that rode out on a horse to deliver a baby and took pigs and chickens for payment. And he did. And there's a little town called Chickasha, Oklahoma, south of Oklahoma City, and he delivered everybody in that town. His name was Walter Bays. He was a great man. So a couple of years go by, and anesthesiologist in private practice, I'm doing very, very well, very busy. And then Harvard gave birth to what I call the Rosemary's Baby of healthcare, and that's the resource-based relative value scale. Truly the satanic price mechanism that was a big part of what got things rolling the wrong way. I received $1,100 for the anesthesia service I provided for an open heart average coronary artery bypass graft. So, really fast surgeon. I was in there 3 hours, 3.5 hours. And I received $1,100 from Medicare for that. After round one of Harvard's Rosemary's Baby, that reimbursement went to $550. They weren't satisfied, and they realized, I think, that they had these hospital-based physicians and many subspecialists over the barrel. The next round of cuts resulted in a payment to me for the very last open heart surgery for which I gave an anesthetic of $285. I had given an anesthetic for a knee replacement for which I received $78. And by then, I had read enough economics to stop being angry and just to realize that prices are signals, and they're sending me a very clear signal about what they believe my time and expertise is worth. And it's an incumbent upon me as an actor in the marketplace to return a very clear and viable signal to them. So I quit. And I didn't quit seeing Medicare patients, I just quit filing claims. I did not want to legitimize a system that was obviously so disconnected with what I believed I was worth. So I provided care to Medicare beneficiaries free and have never accepted a dime of government money since that day in 1992. I actually received a letter from Medicare that said your number is being decommissioned. It's not been used for a long period of time. We're afraid it will now be fraudulently used, so unless we hear from you, you no longer exist. We are no longer, you're not on our radar anymore. But I knew then that my fees were being cut. The hospitals were poor-mouthing it and how much money they were losing. The Clintonistas were at work, trying to take over our lives. The hospitals poor-mouthed like nobody, and yet they were building and building and building, and administrative staff continued to grow and grow. And my fees fell, and there were more administrators. The hospitals continued to build and buy practices and metastasize all over town. So this went on for a number of years, and I started to think, I don't want to enable what's going on. I don't want to be a part of this. But as an anesthesiologist, I was kind of a kept man. I mean, I was a hospital-based physician. Then, in the old days, many of you all remember, when you open up a medical chart, on the left side was all the money stuff, and on the right side was all the clinical stuff. And you could actually see what patients were charged and what the hospital was charging them and what was due from them. And when I finally realized the patients are really the ones that are disenfranchised, I could no longer enable the robbery that I saw that was going on. So Dr. Steve Lantier and I walked away from very successful, very lucrative anesthesia practices. We bought an old burnout surgery center that was about to close. And we actually bought it on a hunting trip. That's another story. And we opened in May of 1997 with the idea that we would never take any money from the government and that we would be honest with patients about what we were going to charge them. The first week it happened, we actually had a patient call, a young woman, and asked, I need a breast biopsy. I just found out I have a breast mass. How much? And I thought, well, this is why we opened this place. So I put her on hold. And I thought, well, how do I do this? So I called the surgeon. I said, how much do you want? He said, I have no idea. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Give me a number. Well, I don't know. And I said, Russell, aren't you sick and tired of somebody else telling you what you're worth? You tell me what you're worth. $500. I thought, that is so ridiculous. That is so cheap. Okay. I just thought, I can't keep this lady on hold very long. She'll hang up. As an anesthesiologist, no offense to any who are in here, we basically bill for our time. I knew how long the surgeon was going to take, and I had just was on the spot there. I had to conjure up a number. What am I worth per hour? I mean, how do I need to be fairly compensated for this? And then I thought, well, this is going to take about 20 or 25 minutes in the surgery center. I know the supplies cost is going to be negligible. So there's some factor of time that I have to consider. So I put a number on that, and I was about to take her off hold, and I thought, wait a minute, she doesn't just want this out. She wants to know what it is. So I called a pathology friend of mine, and I said, how much do you want to examine this tissue? I don't know. And I said, well, pick a number. My God, this lady's on hold and I'm about to lose her. He said, $28. Okay. So I added it up, took her off hold, and said $1,900. And she said, that's interesting. The not-for-profit hospital down the street from you told me $19,000, and that was just the facility. That is still the same. That is still the price on our website today for a breast biopsy. So we put all of our, I'll get to that here in a minute. So we became wildly successful. We were the destination for the uninsured in Oklahoma City and in our area, people that had high deductibles because they knew what they were going to pay. We still filed insurance claims back in the early days, but we told patients what they were going to pay us. We were attacked viciously by legislators, primarily the Republicans. The Democrats, interestingly, saw us as the underdog. They saw us as the ones who were fighting the crony big hospital systems that were just ravaging people's pocketbooks. And the Democrats had our back, interestingly. That changed later on. The Republicans realized they had to start actually having the words free market come out of their mouth. And so they had a more difficult time abusing us for the benefit of their hospital system friends. But we endured countless legislative attacks, people really trying to put us out of business. The insurance companies and the hospitals work very much like a Mexican drug cartel, except the Mexican drug cartel actually provides a service. And I know now for a fact there are arrangements where the hospitals will tell an insurance company, we will contract with you at these rates, but you cannot include facilities A through F in your network. And we were always on that list, as you can imagine. And I pull no punches when I talk about these hospital systems. And I actually have 2 hospital administrator friends now, but we continued to thrive. The Oklahoma City Thunder players came to our place. As a pediatric anesthesiologist, I had anesthetized most of the folks you want to know who can tell other people about you. I'd put all their children to sleep, as had my associates. The Division I athletes all came to our facility. I mean, it was a high-quality facility, very fairly priced, and no insurance company would contract with us. So there were lots of questions that went through my head. What's going on? What in the world? This is not a free market. Well, because of our success, we built this place. It's 40,000 square feet. It's big. It's got a bunch of ORs, and we were in tall cotton. We were really doing well when our legislative and friends and insurance pals got together and figured out a strategy. They stacked deductibles. So people that came to see us out of network, which was everybody because we weren't any of the networks, they had to meet their in-network deductible before the out-of-network deductible kicked in at 0. They stacked deductibles, and that made it financially very difficult, if not impossible, for many of the patients that we had seen to come through our doors. Our volume dropped precipitously. Our patients basically went away, and we started sharpening our pencil, trying to figure out what are we going to do. It was very hard. We decided to self-fund, for one thing, for the benefit of our employees, rather than pay the Nazis at Blue Cross $20,000 a month. We decided that we would self-fund and that we would actually pay for our employees' health care needs out of operating revenue. So that's self-insurance. For those of you that are not familiar, that's how it works. And then you buy a backstop policy for nightmares that you hope you never get into, but it's there. Flash forward, we've saved about $7.5 million since that decision in 2000 to self-fund, and I have 43 employees that work at the surgery center. So I'll come back to self-funding and why that's important for you to understand. So backs against the wall, the market's not at work, we're high quality, we're great cost, and our waiting room is empty. What is wrong? Well, I thought, I need to call all these buddies I know who are self-funded and say, what are you paying for a gallbladder surgery? I'll beat it. And then I thought, no, he doesn't want to reveal that to me as an actor in the marketplace, as a seller, if you'll indulge me and refer to I don't like provider. I like, let's just say seller. I need to give him that signal. Here is what I do, and here is the price I've put on it. I'm obligated, I believe, to send that signal to the buyer. So I thought I need to tell those guys, these self-funded employers, or anyone who'll listen, I'll do a laparoscopic cholecystectomy for $5,865. That's actually our price when we launched the website, and that's the price today. And then my wife, on a walk early one morning, said, why don't you tell everyone? Because there's something terribly wrong. Why don't you just tell everyone? And then maybe you can better figure out what in the world is going on. How do these scams work? So I launched a website, and I put all of our prices online. This is the home page. If you click on any one of those circles, there's a drop down. It's Surgery Center OK for any of you that want to see it. There's a drop down that shows a long list of procedures, not a complete list because it would really foul the site to have our complete list, and a price. Not an estimate, a price, and an all-in price. A price where the patient never has to worry that a bill is trickling in later. It's like somebody comes in, like they do from Canada, with $100 bills in a Ziploc bag, and they put $8,000 on the table, and that's their hysterectomy. That pays the surgeon, anesthesia, facility, path, overnight stay, done. $5,865 for gallbladder. You can go through the list. We've accepted gold coins, silver coins, Bitcoin, cash. The accepting Bitcoin really drew some media attention. That was kind of fun. Well, that was not good, whatever I just did. Here we go. This is the next page I wanted you to see. So for hip arthroscopy, $5,575 for those of you in the back. Rotator cuff repair is $6,160. Distal clavicle excision, it's basically the same time and materials. These are our prices. They're all online for everyone to see. They're the same price for everyone. They're the same price for an individual as they are for a 200,000 life self-employed group that I had a contract with. So we put these prices online, and the first patients to arrive were Canadians. That was very instructive because many Canadians have come to understand the only single payer upon which they really can rely is themselves. They come to the United States to get their care in spite of all the propaganda that you hear otherwise. I'm here to tell you, running a surgery center in Oklahoma City, we saw a lot of Canadians, and that really speaks for itself. The most common story was, I have dysfunctional, painful uterine bleeding, and I've been told I can see the gynecologist in 3 years, and I'm tired of getting transfusions. That was the most common story. And so for $8,000, they could, for a fairly simple medical procedure, they could have their life completely transformed and changed. That to this day is still the most common story that we hear from Canadians. Then the uninsured started coming more and more. People with high deductibles realized I can actually pay for my surgery. I can have my knee arthroscopy for $3,740. That's less than my deductible. And then we have Obamacare come along not much later with these sky-high deductibles. And that was our fastest growing business for a while, was these Obamacare so-called beneficiaries, because they could buy their surgery at our facility for far less than their deductible. They can't even afford to use their benefit, but they can buy the surgery at my place. Then the self-insured folks started to show up, because just like me being self-insured, buying care for my employees, they had the sticker shock. And a fellow named Jay Kempton sought me out. We had a mutual friend, and he said, "Are you for real? Is this seriously? I can write you a check for this and you're done?" And yes. And just like vintage Jay Kempton, he didn't keep me a secret. He put me in front of the Society of Professional Benefit Administrators. So there are these, if you're self-funded, you typically don't hang on to the checkbook and write the checks. You hire someone to administer those claims for you. And that's what Jay Kempton does. And he has, it's called a third-party administrator. And they're all over the country. There are hundreds of them. Jay put me in front of the podium in Las Vegas in front of about 600 third-party administrators. So people start flying their employees into Oklahoma City to have their surgery one after another, paying all their travel costs, paying their entire bill, waiving all deductibles and copays just to get them out of the price gouging venues in Boston, in Miami, the northwestern United States is terrible. Washington and Oregon are two of the most expensive places. Right now, and for the last 5 years, Wisconsin and Alaska are the two states that send us more patients than any other state outside of Oklahoma. Although Texas is, this last 3 months, Texas has beat all of them. So we see more people from Texas now than any other state in the United States except for Oklahoma. Excuse me. So when we put these prices online, we had 3 goals. We wanted the buyers, the people who really had that sticker shock, to be very aware of who we are and where they could receive their care affordably. We also wanted to start a price war, not in the way you think. What I wanted to do was put pricing out for all to see so patients could use that to their benefit even if they did not come to our facility. I'll come back to that. And we had no idea what was going on. What are the scams that are responsible for keeping patients out of the waiting room of a facility like mine that is affordable and high quality? I mean, why was our waiting room empty when some butcher that's part of a hospital system across town, his waiting room is full? Now, I understood the hospital system that buys primary care doctors, they do that to just guarantee referrals and send them up the sausage tube, and then they just churn and churn and churn and make all the revenue that they can. But we really did not understand how the scams worked. It has been astonishingly enlightening what putting our prices online has revealed, not only to us, but to many insiders in the industry, and I'll come to that. So we became more visible to the buyers. Our business went up. People came from all over the place. We had patients that would contact us and say, I used your pricing to my benefit and I'm not coming there, but thank you. Here's an example. A guy in Georgia was quoted $40,000 for a urologic procedure that's listed on our website for $3,600. He told his urologist, holding the sheet up with my pricing, I'm going to Oklahoma City because I can't afford this. The urologist said, not before we go have a visit with the administration. So they go to the hospital administrator and they sit down and the urologist says, you're killing me. This guy's going to Oklahoma City of all places. You're killing me. And the hospital administrator said, we'll do it for $4,000. So the patient contacts me and says, you saved me $36,000 and you didn't even do the surgery. And that was what we had in mind. And I encourage patients to use our pricing to leverage a better deal in their market. An interesting follow-up, we've had several patients that have been in that situation where they said, I'm going to Oklahoma City unless you match this. And, a hospital does something like that where they want $50,000 or $80,000 for, or just like I heard in in a town not far from here recently, $120,000 for a knee replacement. Our price is $15,499. Patient goes in, I'm leaving. Hospital matches our price, and the patient said, I just really wanted to know to what extent you were going to rob me, but I don't trust you at all now. So I'm going to Oklahoma City anyway. So we're seeing some of that as well. Then we'll talk just for a little bit about the scams and how they work. The best way to describe what is truly wrong with how this system works is to envision an aspirin for which a hospital system is charging $100. Now, I don't know how many of you all have actually looked at hospital bills in that detail. Hospitals charge $100 for an aspirin, and some hospitals in the northwestern United States charge more than $100 for an aspirin. So the insurance companies, the BUCAs, Blue, United, Cigna, Aetna, if you're in the industry, you'll hear the word BUCA. It's Blue, United, Cigna, Aetna. They love charges for $100 aspirins. Now, think about that. That's crazy. It doesn't make sense. They wish it were $200, and here's why. 60%, and the latest I saw was 80% of all medical services purchased were purchased by the self-funded buyers. 80% is the last I saw. Now, caveat, I'm taking all of the socialism like Medicare and Medicaid and pushing it aside. The government buys half of the care in this country, right at half. If you take that other 50%, 80% of that is bought by self-funded buyers. But Blue, United, Cigna, and Aetna are the third-party administrators for many of those claims. They receive a claim for $100 for an aspirin. They ride into the employer's office on their white horse and say, well, we're the big bad insurance company, and we beat that hospital to a pulp, and we got a discount, and we got it down to $5 for that aspirin. Now, never mind, the hospital paid a penny. So they're making obscene profit on the aspirin, even with the discount. And then per the terms of our agreement, employer, you owe us a percentage of the savings that we've realized. So they'll receive a commission. Sometimes it's 28, sometimes it's 42% of what they saved that employer. Keep in mind, this PPO pre-negotiated all of these prices with that hospital, and in many instances will ask the hospital to charge more so they can maximize what they reap from shared savings or repricing, as it's called. That's called claims repricing. That's why the insurance companies want nothing to do with me, because I won't charge $50,000 for a knee arthroscopy. I charge $3,740. So they have no opportunity to pillage self-funded employers with claims repricing schemes. They all do it. So let's get back to our aspirin. So they paid a penny for the aspirin, took a beating and accepted $5. Why is the hospital part of this game? Because they'll claim that they lost $95 by not collecting the $100. So we charge $100, we collected $5, we lost $95, don't you know? Well, actually, they made out like a bandit, but they need that red ink to justify the fiction of their not-for-profit status. Furthermore, that the extent to which that red ink accumulates, that gets shipped off in a sewage trolley to Washington, D.C., where it generates a kickback to the hospital to the extent that they are providing uncompensated care. So uncompensated care is that bucket of red ink that they didn't collect on the aspirin that they profited wildly from, but are using to claim that they lost money. Is this gross yet? I won't provide the prices the insurance companies can use to pillage, and that's why they won't use me. It's pretty gross. So I think I'm going to skip over why most insurance brokers are evil. There are some insurance brokers that are not. There's some people that are breaking the mold. But if your takeaway, if an insurance broker that works for one of these big brokerage houses, if they work on commission, they're evil. They're bad people. They are not doing what is in the best interest of their client. They're doing what is in the best interest of the carrier in the PPO, because that's who's paying them the commission. There are some good guys. There's a name, David Contorno. If you want to connect with somebody on LinkedIn, and you want to know the guy who's leading the charge, the good guy brokers, David Contorno is the name I would start with. He is a great guy. He actually had a hernia surgery at my facility and made a documentary out of it because he wanted everybody to know about us and about his experience. Come on, this is funny. Can you all see it in the back? Doctors picketing and the writing's illegible. And I'll say, it's actually worse than illegible, because I'm one of you, and I have been through many phases of my thought process and have faced many incoherent and inconsistent thoughts in myself. And I'm so lucky, I think, to have been around people who challenged me and made me do that. On the front of this sign, it probably says one thing, and on the back of the sign, it probably says something different, and it's totally inconsistent. So on the back of the sign, it probably says Doctors for Smaller Government. On the front of the sign, it probably says, I need more money from Medicare and Medicaid. That is how, as a profession, we are viewed. As someone who speaks to physicians occasionally, but is speaking to buyers in the industry regularly, that is how this profession is viewed. It's special interest. We're all for this, but that needs to apply to other people, not me. So, how many people in here think free markets are a good idea? Yeah, and how many people just think freedom in general is a good idea? How do you not cheer? Yeah, freedom. How many of you belong to the AMA? How many belong to the AMA? I am in front of a great group. How many belong to the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons? Now that is a free market group. How many of you have heard of the Mises Institute? That's where my son, who's sitting in the back, that's where we're headed when we leave here. So, physicians are small government, free markets, yet we support and belong many times to guilds who are anti-free market, who are always trying to figure out a way to hamstring any challenges rather than support us just competing on our own. And I think that it's important. This is kind of the cheerful sledgehammer I brought to this talk. I think everybody needs to seriously consider that and acknowledge that, because we really are viewed as a special interest. When I speak to an employer and I say, this is what I do and here's how much it is, oh, they just sigh. Like, oh my gosh, that's what the rest of the industries in the United States have to do. Thank you for doing that. And I think that as physicians in this room, you need to first understand it is possible to do what I've done, and there is a huge, huge crowd out there waiting for you to do it. I think that physicians as a group, and I'm not laying any blame because I'm one of you and I've been there, but I think we tend to be very socialistic as a group. And that sounds harsh, but it's understandable actually. We participate in a medical system, half of which is socialized. I mean, people talk about the great United States health, we need single payer. Well, we've got pretty much single payer for half the people in the United States. 50%, and if you include the VA and TRICARE, it's over 50% of the people are part of socialized schemes. And that is part of our training. We all train in environments where we're exposed to that. We're also trained by people who are not in the free market, who tend to be socialistic. They are the people in residency. There are exceptions to this. I'm using broad strokes to make a point. But the people who train us in residency tend to be very socialistic. We also tend to, as physicians, to attack problems with the idea of eradicating them. And social issues are not like that. They never, ever go away, ever. And that's hard for us in our eradication mode. Let's fix this, let's make it go away. And as physicians, we are not trained to think through, well, let's do the best we can. In some instances we do, we manage disease, but with these social issues, we tend to think that we can fix this, and that's another reason that, well, but what about this crowd over here? Well, we need some social safety net for them. And so it sounds very harsh sometimes for me when I'm talking about free markets and people ask, what about the poor? And then they're very shocked to hear that I actually believe the poor are better off without these social schemes, and I can explain that if you're interested. So I would encourage you all to look into yourselves for any inconsistencies where that may be providing an obstacle for you pursuing a path where you say, here is what I do and here's how much it is. It's very tough to do. I don't fault anybody who doesn't do it, but it's the most liberating thing you'll ever do. Always keep in mind when we're talking about who the problem is, this is the problem. Are the pharmacy companies gross and just awful? Yes, of course they are. Are the bukas, are they just pillaging? Are these huge abusive cartel-like hospital systems abusive and awful and bankrupting everybody that comes in their path? Yes. But he's driving the getaway car. Without the goons in D.C. on both sides of the aisle, and many times in state government, almost invariably in state government, without the state, none of these schemes work. The free market tears all of these schemes down, but the free market has been hampered because of government. So whenever you hear the government pillaging somebody like Martin Scrusy for, jacking up the price of a drug, keep in mind the real criminals are the ones that are grilling him in the legislature in D.C. because they've set up all of the conditions with huge payouts for having done so. They have set up all the conditions for guys like that to get rich. So I'm not alone. There are a lot of people like Surgery Center of Oklahoma that are working to bring free markets. It's creating a lot of pressure on other sellers in the marketplace. And I would encourage every one of you to check out the Free Market Medical Association, if for no other reason than to keep your finger on the pulse of this movement as it progresses. This is to keep fresh in your mind while you look at this one. All right, let's go back. So that's my website. This is UCLA. Now, they didn't ask me, they just copied it. We took enough patients from Los Angeles over a short period of time that they felt the pressure. Competition is a beautiful and powerful thing. Murray Rothbard, the great Austrian economist, referred to the free market as simultaneously powerful and beautiful. UCLA, I mean, that is a big health system. That makes Baylor look like Toy Story. So they took my website and they have cash pricing displayed on a website. Now, it's a little hard to find, and there are a lot of asterisks that are underneath it, that what is not included. So it's really not true cash pricing. It's an imposter's attempt to show cash pricing, but it's in response to a large number of patients from the LA area that came to our facility for a period of time. Competition is so much more powerful than any legislator's pen. Everyone in here is competent and wonderful at what you do, and the world is just waiting for everybody in here to say, here are my skills, and here is how I put a price on them, and then the Berlin walls fall. They fall. You, by bringing pricing and quality to the table, none of these systems can stand if we all do that. So, one of my favorite quotes came from Gandhi, and it was exactly our experience at the Surgery Center of Oklahoma, and it's been exactly the experience of anyone that's taken this path. First, he said, in response to the British overlords and tyrants that were just ruthless with India, first, they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. Thank you.